Hi, buddy. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at Ornn First Impressions. So he was just released within the last couple of days. I've watched some PBE videos of him, and they finally have the stats of him up on League Wikia. A bunch of people have been asking me about him, so I did a lot of research, some in-depth sort of thought about where he might fit into the meta and where he might best fit in overall in terms of position, itemization, roles on a team, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to bring you that. Been researching this for probably about 3 hours now. Now keep in mind, this is within a couple of days of him being on the PBE, so these numbers could change in the future. I just know that a lot of people get excited, including myself, for new champions. So I'm just trying to give you the best in-depth analytical breakdown that I can. I don't have gameplay footage. I don't have access to the PBE. There's a lot of that already out there. What there's not a lot of is analysis of where he's going to fit in, what his numbers actually mean, and whether or not he's going to be powerful based on his skill set and his numbers. So that's what I'm going to try to provide you, is that analytical aspect to go along with the gameplay footage that you watch out there. Okay, so first of all, we're going to talk about his abilities, where they fit in, what's strong, what's probably overrated, what's underrated, and then we'll talk about the meta prediction, where I think he'll fit in, champions that I think he's good with, good itemization, and all of that stuff. I'm going to try to make this video relatively short. For one of my guides, I'll do a proper full guide once he's released, and we have the actual numbers on him. But for now, this is just going to be a preview, and I'm going to try to keep it to 20 to 30 minutes. We'll see if I can do that. My typical guide is usually about an hour long, so this is going to be sort of a mini guide. I thought about adding it onto the patch notes, which I still need to do also for 7.16. But I think there's enough information here, and people want to see it stand alone, that I'm just going to make it a separate video. Okay, so let's go ahead and get in here. Oh, and if you haven't watched one of my videos before, you can find this Google Doc in the description, as well as timestamps for the different parts of the video, so you can skip around and find your favorite moments if you don't have time to watch the whole thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and get in here and take a look at him real quick. Okay, so we don't know his base stats. We know he's going to have scaling MR. I assume he's probably going to be pretty tough with his base stats. So, and he's from the Freljord. I would imagine like Braum-esque type of numbers. So a pretty hardy tank with, you know, maybe 335 move speed. I don't expect him to be super fast. You know, like 25 to 30 starting armor, pretty low attack speed, decent attack damage, but probably low. I don't know. I don't know for sure, but I just expect him to have like your standard run-of-the-mill tank stats. Okay. Living Forge. So you can purchase non-consumable items from anywhere on the field by forging them himself. And it's also presented a forge menu with his recommended items to select to be forged. Forging takes 4 seconds. Okay, so from what I've seen from the footage of this, it's not clear whether you have control over what that little mini set of forge stuff is, or whether that when they say recommended, then it's just the recommended items. I hope they give you creative control over that. But either way, it's really powerful. You don't have to go back to shop as long as you don't run out of health, because you can't buy potions. That's the big one. And as support, you're not going to be able to buy wards either. Or as any lane, you're not going to be able to buy wards. And you're not going to be able to refill your wards. So as support, just spoiler alert, I think support's going to be the main role where you'll see him the most. Living Forge is alright. Like, you might be able to stay in lane and grab some boots or grab a cloth armor. Now, if it lets you upgrade your gold item, that would actually be pretty massive. If you could upgrade your gold item and stay in lane. Because your gold item that you're going to get on him is Eye of the Equinox, and that will, in turn, give you more regeneration, because it'll give you more procs. Because the upgrade from just Relic Shield to whatever the second tier Relic, Targon's Brace, is pretty big. It gives you 3 procs. Or it gives you a proc every 30 seconds instead of every 45 seconds. So that's really big for sustaining in lane. So if you can stay in lane and just drop your 500 gold to upgrade to Targons, that's actually pretty massive for sustain and hanging out in lane. Because a lot of times you can get that item far before your ADC wants to back. So a lot of ADCs want to back once they get 1350 gold to get that BF sword. And sometimes you can get your item first, particularly if you get a kill early on, which he could potentially be a kill lane. He has quite a bit of damage early. Well, a decent amount of damage, depending on how well you chain together his stuff. But either way, pretty powerful. I'm not sure about the limitations on that. You know, if it only is going to let you get, like, even getting a cloth armor or, like, maybe even boots would be okay. based on what I saw in the PBE, it looks like they give you a choice to get like a ruby crystal, a cloth armor, and like maybe a mana crystal, a couple of dinky little items. I mean, getting a ruby crystal in lane if you're going to go for a Sightstone first can be pretty powerful because that'll give you more health for an all-in. But I think if you can get that gold item upgraded, that's going to be the big ticket. But we'll see. It's a cool ability. I don't think it's going to be that game-breaking because most champions are like, he's going to have to go back in most situations to heal, to get wards, and stuff like that anyways. But I could see this being situationally pretty good. Okay, so Ornn and each of his teammates can purchase masterwork upgrades. Each player may only have one masterwork upgrade at a time. So the way this was worded and the way people were talking about it, I thought that Ornn was going to be able to purchase these upgrades for other people, but that does not look like it's the case. That could change, or maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but it does not look like you can purchase upgrades for other people. It just means that everybody, if they want to, if they own that item, they can basically pay 1,000 gold if Ornn is in the game, or 500 depending on the item, and they can upgrade the item to give you some extra stats. This is not as big of a deal for most items as people think they are. Like I heard people saying, oh my gosh, Ornn's team's going to be OP because they can spend all this extra gold to upgrade their items. Well, once they get to 6 items, yeah, they're going to get a little bit. But, you know, is having a couple of extra AD at 6 items 50 minutes into a game really going to make that much of a difference? Probably not most of the time. But I did go ahead and I crunched the numbers for all of these for you. So we can see, you know, just exactly how efficient these are. Now, keep in mind, like, the stuff that you get, the bonuses, are just the most boring stats on all of the items. They don't give you anything extra to the actives, to the passives. There are no special passives. It's just straight up. It gives you, like, more ability power or more health or more armor or whatever. They don't tinker with anything cool like the passives. It's just a numbers crunch. Which I think is kind of a missed opportunity. I mean, I don't want to be ungrateful. You know, it is a really cool ability, just to begin with. But I think that they were worried that it was going to be very difficult to balance if they added unique passives to these items, or even just like one unique passive, because there's so many different types of items. They wanted it to be good on all kinds of different team comps, so that it's useful in solo queue. But at the same time, they don't want it to be something that has an interaction that could particularly be overpowered. That's going to be very difficult to balance around. So, you know, giving the ability for everybody to upgrade an item is already difficult enough to balance around to make sure it's not overpowered. And so I think they wanted to play it on the safe side and just give them the most bland basic stats and make it not very efficient to do it. Like, not inefficient, but at the same time, just making it not really that much better than just moving on to your next item in the chain unless you already have 6 items. I think that's what they were aiming for here. So it would have been cool if they had like a Freljord themed passive, like some extra CC, or I don't know, just something cool like that. But it is what it is. I think they're playing it safe here, and I think that's probably smart because we've never seen a champion like that in League before. So anyways, how efficient are these items? Well, I went ahead and crunched the numbers for you. The most of them are not worth it. And the reason, unless you have the 6th item, the reason is it slows your progression, so you can't get to the next item. Because what typically makes a lot of items strong are the passives, or are their particular interactions, right? So, you know, the thing that makes Infinity Edge really strong is, yeah, it has AD on it, and it has Critical Strike, but it's that modifier that adds the extra damage to all additional critical strikes. That's what makes it strong. Yeah, Black Cleaver, you know, people like the AD and the HP on it, but you're getting it for the Phage passive, so you can stick to people as a tank. You're getting it for the armor shred. So by upgrading these items, you're just investing in extra raw stats, and you're delaying your build to get other items that could potentially be more powerful. So most of the time, I don't think it's worth it. I really don't. But we'll go ahead and look at the efficiency here. So Sunfire 1132 is 1.13 efficiency. That's okay. If you look at like the base on Sunfire, that is efficient compared to the base, right? So the base is only 80% efficient. So all of these are over 100% efficient. So it is worth your time in essence, but this doesn't calculate just like how much damage the unique passive does. Hey, thanks for the sub. I appreciate it. So they are a little bit efficient. So Abyssal, you get an extra 1.16 efficiency. So it's okay. But remember, the trade-off for getting that little bit of extra efficiency is delaying your other items. I need to like really reiterate that. Like, it looks good on paper, but you're delaying your build. You're not getting your other items. You're not building up your synergy with a lot of these things. However, there are a couple of outliers. There are two that I think are really strong, which I'll just go ahead and jump to. So I don't think that Sunfire, Abyssal, Black Cleaver, Trinity is definitely not worth it. And the thing about Trinity, not only is it only 1.01% efficient, but a lot of those stats are wasted on HP and mana in particular. And who, like, you don't want that. Like, people are getting Trinity Force for the Trinity proc, right? So you're getting it so that you do that extra burst damage right whenever you use an ability and attack somebody. That's why you get Trinity Force. The other stuff is nice, but that's really the main attraction there. So spending an extra 1,000 gold just so you can get a little bit more mana and a little bit more attack speed, it's not worth it. Redemption, however, is the worst bargain. I didn't even crunch the numbers on it. Just do not do the redemption one. It is absolutely not worth your time. It's not even worth considering, because all that you get off of this, you get 100 health, and you get some extra health regen and mana regen. Who cares? Like, the mana regen is already exceptionally high on this item, and you don't need health regen, because most of the champions that are going to get redemption are going to have an internal heal. And a lot of times when you complete redemption, then you're already going to start to leave the laning phase, and really health regen is only like useful during the laning phase unless your champion has some kind of special interaction with health or health regen. Like Soraka, it's all right on Soraka, but even outside the laning phase, it's not that great. It's not worth your 500 gold at all, because you're just getting regen, which is some of the worst stats in the game. And mana regen's okay. And there is some scaling with mana regen on Athene's Unholy Grail if you're playing a champion that gets that. So that's okay. But really, you do not want to upgrade this. And a lot of champions that get redemption, like, the health is nice, but they don't need the health that much because they shouldn't be getting hit that much. So, you know, if it added shielding power, or if it added some AP, or even if it added like a ton more mana regen, like if it added like 200% mana regen or something, like, yeah, okay, that might be worth. Because that's going to scale with Athene's, and that's going to solve a lot of your mana regen problems. So if they just like went completely over the top and gave you like 200 extra mana regen and just took away the health and took away the health regen, that might be considerable. But the way that it is right now is it's bad. Locket is not really that great either. I mean, you get a little bit of extra armor and magic resist, you get a 1.34 efficiency, but once again, you're not picking Locket, and you're not picking most support items because they make you personally more tanky. You're picking a lot of support items because they help other people out. Especially with Locket, you're picking Locket so that you get that huge shield that benefits everybody else. So, you know, the fact that it has armor and magic resist is all good, but that's not really the main attraction. And it's not worth spending an extra 500 gold. 500 gold doesn't sound like much. I watched Red Mercy's video, and he's like, okay, it's an okay upgrade. It's just 500 gold. 500 gold is a lot for a support. That is a lot of gold. I mean, when you're talking about an item like Redemption that only costs 2,100, that's like a 25% increase in cost. It's a massive increase in cost. Not quite. It's like 23% or something. But it's a massive increase in cost. So most of these are just garbage. However, the two that are good, one is Infinity Edge. And the reason these two are good is because they have, on the single item, they have scaling where you can get this item, and then immediately once you upgrade, you're going to get a bonus off the scaling. That's what that Astrosy is for. So let's go ahead and look at these in particular and why these will be good. And why I think they're better than the others, because they have the internal scaling. Okay, so it's just a one item power spike, in other words. When you get it and when you upgrade it, it's a huge power spike. So you get 30 extra attack damage. Now, the thing that's important about this is that is just straight up attack damage, which is what you want when you get Infinity Edge. So that is the main attraction. Like, getting the, getting the critical bonus is really nice, right? But the attack damage is so important because it scales with the critical chance and it scales with your passive, the extra critical chance. So all of that synergizes together to make the AD worth. It helps everything out on the item, and it helps everything out in your kit, because attack damage is usually the best stat, one of the best stats on all AD champions that are going to get Infinity Edge and Critical Strike. So that's what makes it good. Versus something like Cleaver, where you are getting some attack damage, but you're also getting health. And a lot of times, you know, the health is nice, the damage is nice, but it's just not worth the cost. It doesn't have extra scaling. I guess, like, shredding the armor does scale with the AD, but the health doesn't scale that well. It's just a jumble of stats. It's difficult to evaluate, and it's probably not worth it. Just because you just want to move on to your next item a lot of times, rather than getting a little bit of extra health. However, this is very good. So the extra attack damage in and of itself is 1,500 gold worth of attack damage, and that is a little bit less efficient than a BF sword. I don't remember how much less efficient. It's like just a couple of percentage points less efficient. It's similar to getting a BF sword in terms of raw efficiency. I mean, we could look at it here. I think a BF sword is what? Let me see here. Pretty sure a BF sword is 1350. It used to be like, it's changed around so much over the years. I think it's 1400. You can tell I don't play ADC a lot. Yeah, so if you look at a BF sword, gives 40 attack damage. So if you look at 35 per, right? And if you look at 1,000 divided by 30 attack damage, then it's 33.33. Okay, so it is slightly more efficient than a BF. I don't know where I got that it wasn't. So you're paying 33 per point of AD. So it's, you know, whatever that is, it's 5% more efficient than buying a BF sword. So it is slightly more efficient than buying an extra BF sword. I gotta correct that. And then, let's see. Okay. So it is actually 5% more efficient than a BF. And the internal scaling, you got to remember, so you get critical strike on it, which also scales, the 20% crit, and then you have the extra 50% scaling on your crits. So that means that you're basically, it's like having 30% critical strike chance. You're getting 50% extra efficiency on your critical strike modifiers. So that means you get that extra AD, that 30 AD, or it's 30% extra efficiency because you basically have 30% extra damage built into all of your AD. So whatever your AD is, it's 30% more efficient because that's how critical strike with the extra 50% modifier works. You have 20%, 50% more effective. That turns it to 30%. That means you're doing 30% more damage. So if this is 1,050 damage worth of gold, you do times 0.3, and that's how you get the 315. So really, this is 1,365 gold worth of stats because of the scaling that's internal to the item itself. So I didn't count, I mean, some of this other stuff might scale with other items. You could get, you know, if you get a Cinder Hulk and then you get an Abyssal Mask, and you're going to get extra efficiency out of that upgrade on the Abyssal Mask. Whatever. I'm just only calculating single item efficiency, single item power spikes using this Ornn passive. So that's a 1.37 efficiency. That's actually quite good. So, you know, there might be some builds on some champions, and I'm trying to, like, maybe Draven, maybe Caitlyn, people who want critical strike a lot because they have extra modifiers in their kit, and people who want a lot of extra AD as well and don't care as much about attack speed. So that's Draven, Caitlyn. Those are the only two. I think those are the most prominent cases. There might be some other ones that I'm forgetting out there, but I think Draven and Caitlyn might be champions that would be interested in rushing Infinity Edge and then rushing this upgrade and just having this massive power spike in damage and just like crushing you with the traps and crushing you with the Draven Q, which scales amazingly well with AD and with critical strike. So I could see Draven like rushing Infinity Edge and then rushing this, that extra 1,000 for that 5% efficiency. That extra 5% efficiency on the AD. I could see them rushing that and just being like a massive like item power spike. Draven's going to have the extra gold to do something like that if he gets a couple of kills early on too. So I could see that being particularly powerful. Now remember, if you do that, then you're losing out on your attack speed item. You're slowing it down a lot, so you're not going to get your static shiv as fast. But I think there could be situations where it would definitely be worth it. It just turns your single item into a huge power spike, so you get that extra 1.37 efficiency out of it. So I think that's quite good. Death Cap is the marquee one, though. I think this one might be something that actually changes the meta around a little bit if you can get that Death Cap upgrade. So if we look at Death Cap is an item that Has not really been rushed a lot historically. However, some champions will get its second item. The reason that it's not rushed is it doesn't give you any utility. It's just raw power, similar to Infinity Edge. Infinity Edge does give you that extra critical strike scaling, which is important. But this gives you ability power scaling. So, and it gives you a straight up 55 extra ability power. And then it scales with itself once again, just like Infinity Edge. So you get the extra 35% ability power. So if you do ability power is 21.75 per ability power. I know these because I've done lots of stat videos. The efficiency of these different stats. You can watch my stat videos as well on the main channel if you just look. Well, I'll advertise it later, I guess, in terms of stats. But if you just look on my channel and just type in like itemization or just look on the front page, you'll see an itemization video that'll tell you all the raw stat values. But 21.75 times you're getting 55 equals 1196. And you multiply that by 0.35. $11.96 multiply. Oh, I think I did it by 0.3 because I thought it was 0.3 scaling, not 0.35. Is that what I did? Let me see. Yeah, I multiplied it by 0.3, so it's even better than I thought it was. Okay, so I was thinking of the critical strike from the earlier one. 418 or 419 rather. Let's add those up. 1615. Basically 162 scaling efficiency. So that's really, really efficient for an AP item. That's very, very efficient. That's staggeringly efficient. So that's really, really good. So any champion, and I'll talk about who this is going to be good on here in just a second. Like actually in almost literally just a second, I'll go into some of the champions this will be good on. But this could change the game a little bit and turn it around from like a utility type of mid laner, not utility, but like champions that want to rush things like Morello's because they need the mana, or champions that want to rush things like Rylai's, or just some of these other little dinky items that have some AEP on it, but don't really have that raw, like, kick you in the teeth and one-shot you like the old Deathcat builds used to be. Now it might be the return of the return of the cap here, because that is monstrous. Okay, so these are the two items that I think will be most important. So Deathcap, I think this could be so meta changing if you have one of these champions on your team that you might want to just. Now, it's going to take people a while to figure this out. They're not going to know this in the first couple of weeks, probably until an LCS team does it and the commenters talk about it, just how strong Deathcap's going to be after this. I think as probably a second item, maybe a first item on some champions, but I think probably a second item. And it's the interaction with Lichbane that is going to be particularly powerful. So, Deathcap's 10% more efficient than going Needlessly Large Rod. I think it's even more so because I just did this. So, that 1.62. Okay, so the extra gold is giving you 1.62. What's the efficiency on Rod? Rod can't be more than. Yeah, it's 104 efficient, so it's like 54% more efficient. Well, no, because you're not going to get that 35%, because the 35% off of Deathcap would also work with Needlessly Large Rod. So if we looked at, you're just looking at this, the 1196, not the scaling off of it. So if you look at 1196, you know, that's 1. 1.2 basically efficiency. A needlessly large rod is 1.04. So, you know, it's about 16% or so. So upgrading this, so if you get a death cap, upgrading the death cap to this new thing is going to be 16% more efficient than moving on and buying a needlessly large rod and continuing to your next item. So that's pretty big efficiency spike. So once again, you're delaying getting your third item probably if you go like Lichbane into death cap. You're delaying your third item, but you are accelerating your power spike, right? So you're making that it's basically like a 2.5 item power spike instead of waiting for that third item power spike on some of these champions. So I think champions that could potentially be pretty good with this, Azir immediately comes to mind. Azir, once he gets his Nashor's Tooth, he doesn't really need a lot of other utility, and he just wants as much AP as he can possibly get because his soldier scales so hard off of the AP that I think Azir could potentially go like Nashor's Tooth plus Death Cap, and then this upgrade, and then just like take over a game. Veigar is another person who would benefit very heavily from this. Because Veigar naturally gets a lot of extra AP anyways off of his Q, then Death Cap is a really strong item on him because it gives you even more percentage off of his passive. So getting Death Cap and then upgrading it would make perfect sense on Veigar as well. Vlad is another one who's kind of out of the meta right now, but he scales very well with flat AP too. He doesn't have mana problems. That's one thing that if you're going to get Death Cap, one of the big trade-offs is if you get it particularly... I mean, I guess you could go like Morello into Death Cap if you wanted to. But a lot of times, champions that'll benefit the most from Death Cap aren't going to need... They're going to have really high AP ratios and scaling, but they're also not going to need mana as much. They're not going to be mana-starved champions. So Azir's usually fine on mana because a lot of his damage is just auto-attacks in fights once he puts the soldiers out. So he's really not that starved for mana typically. Veigar is kind of the same thing. Like, mana is nice. I mean, you can sit there and that lets you farm a little bit more, but your Q is so cheap anyways that it's okay. And usually you don't blow a lot of mana until you full combo somebody. So Veigar is a champion where you can get Morello, but it's not as necessary. You know, other champions that need things like Morello would be, you know, like Anivia or Orianna, Syndra, Talia. A lot of these champions are going to get Morello Domicon. So the Death Cap, the best Death Cap users will not need to use that. Vel'Koz is another one. He does like having the mana, but the AP is so good on him because that transitions into true damage with his ult, and it scales really, really hard. So he definitely likes that. He does like his Leandries. Leandries is very good on him. But he doesn't need spell penetration as much as other champions because he could do that true damage if you're using his ult correctly. So I think that Azir and Veigar are good candidates. Azir is the mainstream one that you might actually see quite a lot use this, especially in professional play. Use this build if they have a Ornn on their team. Another interaction that I think is going to be really strong, and I think both of these champions are both directly and indirectly getting buffed on 7.16, and we'll see what they do on 7.17, but are Fizz and Echo. So they're nerfing a lot of the other mid lane champions, especially their ability to poke people out early. They're hitting their mana costs. So that's going to open up the field for these melee assassin type of champions to come into the fold a little bit more. And they did buff Fizz. They lowered the cooldown on his E, which means you don't have to max Playful Trickster, so you can go for the W, which scales super hard with AP, by the way. So I don't remember if I got the exact... I think I got the correct Death Cap calculations there. So your total AP with, let's say that you get Lichbane plus Death Cap. Okay, so it's what, one... Let me make sure I did that math right really quickly. Since I was scaling the Death Cap off of 0.3 instead of 0.35, you just make sure. Okay, so we have 175 plus Lichbane's 80. And then I think I did plus 25 from runes. $378. Okay, so it's a little bit off. I said 364. I'm not going to redo all that math, but it's even better than it looks, and it looks really good. So let's walk through this really quick. Let me pull down Fizz. If you haven't looked at Fizz's scaling with AP, it's absolutely through the roof. This is just an example. Echo is similar. Echo has really high scaling on his AP, and I think he'll be another beneficiary of this. So these champions already want to rush Lichbane because they have spammable abilities that let them use that Lichbane proc. And they like the movement speed, and they just like everything about Lichbane. Lichbane also has built-in flat mana, so that means you don't have to get something like a Morello's, and you're not missing out on that much early trading potential in lane. It's just instead of getting the mana regen, you're getting the flat mana. So I think it's still just about as good in terms of mana management. And these champions don't spam abilities, right? So Fizz and Echo don't typically spam that much. Echo can wave clear with his Q, but Lichbane gives him the mana to be able to do that a little bit more anyways. Okay, so this is the main attraction. And remember that not too long ago, right? Now, I know this is about Ornn, but this is important to, like, meta changing things that are why Ornn could be particularly powerful in a meta is because he allows people to upgrade this death cap, which in turn makes these types of champions a lot stronger. So this is Ornn related. We'll get to Ornn specifically here in a second, but I just want to talk about the meta that he might create just by existing, just by picking Ornn because of these new item upgrades. So remember that a while ago, they nerfed these champions a little bit, particularly Fizz. They knocked back his base damage. I think it was on his W. And they gave him a higher AP ratio. And it was a pretty big nerf, but he does have the higher AP ratio. So now that you can go something like an upgraded death cap, then it might come back into the fold. So look at this percentage. So he has a 1.6 on his W. So you auto attack somebody, you wait 2 seconds, you auto attack them again, and then it's going to do 1.6 damage. So if you look at just the raw damage, if you just have death cap plus Lichbane, and here's Lichbane. The one thing that sometimes people forget about a Lichbane is it has a 0.5 AP ratio on it, unlike Trinity Force. So it's not just your base attack damage, it also scales off of AP, and you know what gives a lot of AP? Death cap. So it has great synergy with death cap. If you go Lichbane, death cap, it's quite the powerful combo. So if we look at the math here, if you look at Fizz with his E proc, this is just a standard E proc. Let's say that you have Lichbane plus death cap plus the upgrade. It's 8,000 gold, so it's expensive. But it's about a 2.5 item power spike. If a typical item is about, 3,000 gold or so, it's about 2 and some change item power spike. So this is going to be kind of your, 20 to 25 minutes in the game unless you're really fed. But still, just look at these numbers. Just one E proc. Over 1,100 damage. 1,100 damage off of just 2 items with that upgrade. Mathematically, that's how it works out. Now, if you do a full combo around level 11, now, by full combo, I'm even counting getting the weakest fish you can possibly get. So just like point blank hitting them with a guppy damage, right? So the full combo would be, you go in with Urchin Strike, auto attack them with Seastone Trident, go up with Playful, come down with Trickster, hit him with Chum the Waters, then auto attack him again with Seastone Trident. It might even, I think I only counted 1 Seastone Trident hit. So it's going to do even more than this, but 2373 damage off of 2 items. It's just one quick little combo, just point blank hitting with a fish right in the face where you can't miss it, not even going for the big fish. You can still just completely evaporate a squishy champion. If you throw this together with like a Void Staff as your next item, it's just completely 3 item, lights out. It is extremely powerful. So I think that champions that use the Lichbane and that like Death Cap, that don't have mana problems, that don't particularly want something like a Leandri's, I think they're going to be really strong. And I think that Fizz and Echo are the 2 biggest beneficiaries of that. So I think that there will be some ranged champions like Azir that will benefit, maybe Veigar, but I think that some of the biggest ones will probably be Fizz and Echo. Just because they already want to itemize Lichbane and they wouldn't mind getting a Death Cap. They can get other stuff, like Azonia's is cute on them. And there are a couple other, things they could get. But if the death cap is going to be that strong, especially with the upgrade and it's scaling with Lichbane, then I think it's definitely something to consider. So, anyways, the rest of Ornn's passive here So yes, I think that he just might change the meta just by virtue that people can upgrade Rabadon's Death Cap. Potentially that they can upgrade Molten Edge. Although Draven and Caitlyn are already really good, this is going to make them a little bit better. I don't think we'll see Draven in pro play, but Caitlyn's still really good. So you might see the Living Forge and then Caitlyn rush Infinity Edge plus that upgrade. Okay, the rest of his kit, the Bellows Breath. So your Bellows Breath is your W, which is probably your best ability. That's what you'll max first to support. The final tick of that ability is going to apply Brittle. And your ultimate, when it hits people on the way in and hits people on the way out, because it can hit twice, it's going to apply Brittle. And what Brittle does is the next immobilizing effect against a Brittle champion. So I'm pretty sure this does not count a slow. No, it's just root, snare. Okay, so everything except for a slow, a disarm, stuff like that, a silence. It has to be one of these hard things. It has to be like a stun, a root, an entangled, a fear, a charm, airborne, something like that. So it doesn't count slows. Crap, I should not have gone out of it. Okay, let me go back. I'll get to him. Here we go. They get this Brittle, and that means that whatever hit them, the crowd control is going to last 30% longer. So, you know, if you have a stun that lasts 2 seconds and they get hit with this, it's going to be 2.6 seconds, which is huge. I mean, it's going to be disgusting with someone who has really long CC, like a Malachi ult, or a like a Sejuani stun, or, you know, even Fiddlesticks, or definitely Morgana. Jesus, if you're probably not going to see him combined with Morgana, but if Morgana hits somebody with a Q, it's just going to be massive. So what would it almost be 4-second CC off of one ability, and it does a percentage of their maximum health, and there's no cooldown on this, unlike someone like Braum, unlike someone like Sejuani. You can just proc this over and over and over again as long as you keep giving people Brittle. And there are scenarios where you can triple proc Brittle on people. So if you do your W, let's say you do your W, your Brittle shows up. You can either auto attack them to trigger it, or you can summon in your ult. When the ult runs in, it's going to trigger it. Actually, it's not, because it does a slow. So you're going to have to auto attack them. And then it's going to roll in, trigger it again. So now Brittle's going to be on him again. And then if he attacks it, or if he attacks the... So he's going to trigger it again when the ult comes in. If he does his little dash, headbutting it, knock up enemies. Okay, so it doesn't do the knock up, although it can hit twice. Maybe it's just a 2-hit. I thought it was going to be a 3. Okay, so you bellow, auto attack, cast this. It's not going to Brittle because it's a slow. Okay, so it's just a 2-hit, not a triple hit. So it hits him once, you hit it again, and then it knocks him up, triggers Brittle, you hit him again. So you can double strike the Brittle in pretty quick succession. So that's quite a lot. And then don't forget that allies can also proc it when it comes in. Actually, no. Okay, so it can triple proc. It can triple proc. I'm getting the text mixed up there. So you can do the bellows. That'll trigger it on the end. Auto attack. Summon in your thing here. As soon as it touches them, because it says that causes it as well. That causes Brittle. As soon as it touches them, you can go in with like your Searing Charge, knock them up. If you hit terrain, that will trigger another Brittle. Or one of your allies can stun somebody and trigger a Brittle. And then you knock it with your headbutt. That, as it goes back out, it will tag it with another Brittle, and then I think it knocks it up. I'm not sure how that works, whether the knock-up would trigger the Brittle itself, or whether it knocks up and then triggers the Brittle. I don't know if it would instantly proc a Brittle or not, because it says Call to the Forge God applies Brittle for 6 seconds. And it says they can be hit twice by this thing. It specifically says that. Can damage enemies twice. So, get hit once. So, basically, your W can trigger brittle. First, when the ram runs in, tag somebody, then you can, like, searing charge them into a wall or something, or into your pillar from Q. Knock them up. That will activate the brittle. That's 2 brittles. And then you headbutt the ram. Then it will touch them again. I just don't... And that could be a potential 3rd brittle if you auto-attack them. Or I'm not sure if it touches them and then knocks them up and gives you an instant brittle. I'm not sure. But either way, that could be a triple brittle proc almost instantly. And by the time you do all that, if you have a lot of CDR, which you will, off an 8-second cooldown on this, you can probably almost do your Bellows Breath again. So you can get 3 brittles in pretty quick succession. So that is a lot of damage. I mean, even at like level 10, that's 36% of their max health. So yeah, really, really, really strong, especially with no internal cooldown. And your allies can trigger this as well. Like I said, so if it's in a team fight and this like Bellows Breath, you know, hits 3 people in a team fight, and then you know, I don't know, Sejuani comes in and starts stunning people, or Malachi uses his ult, or Amumu uses his ult and hits a bunch of people, it'll trigger brittle on all of them. So I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty dang good. So this is a very complicated, very interesting, and very powerful passive. I mean, just the ability to build this upgrade on Rabadon's Death Cap could change the meta quite a bit, or at least accelerate the power that's already going to be there with Fizz and Echoes. I think they're both going to get a lot better on 7.16. Okay, so what about his other abilities? How are we looking on time here? 41. Jesus, I really wanted this to be like 30 minutes, but it looks like it's going to be an hour anyways. So the Q's pretty solid. You can use it as wave clear, because it says that it only stops when it hits an ally champion. So you can do this right down a minion wave, and has a 100% AD ratio, which might be relevant top lane, but he doesn't have an AD ratio on anything else. So if you stack a bunch of AD, I'm not sure if that's going to be optimal, because he just doesn't have any scaling other than just his normal auto attacks, and he doesn't have any auto attack steroids. Like, he doesn't get a lot of extra attack speed, or he doesn't have any specific like interactions with AD. So I don't know. This isn't bonus AD though. It's important to note that. So even like if you were to max this out top lane, even like at level 9, it's not telling you what the attack damage is. But even at level 9, if your attack damage is like 80 or something like that, 75, 80, then let's say it's 75, this would still deal like, what, 215 damage down a line to a minion wave, and then you can cast it again after that. That's going to start to eat into your mana a little bit. He's probably not going to have a very large mana pool, I would guess, because he's like a tank. So I don't know. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It does decent damage, not a lot. It does slow them for a little bit. And then after the delay, you get the impassable magma pillar that stays there for 4 seconds. So pretty decent. I imagine you're not. This would be the last thing you would max. As a support, it's definitely the last thing you would max. I'm pretty sure. As a top laner, probably. It's probably the last thing you would max still. But it's okay. It sets up a pillar, which is a great combo with your E. It's great for blocking off choke points. It has a decent slow, a little bit of area of effect. Has a really nice range. 800 cast range is pretty huge. So that seems pretty good. Okay, your W is what's particularly strong. So does excellent area of effect damage. So first of all, you get a maximum health. You get a shield for 12% of your max health that lasts over 4 seconds. So that right there is pretty good. I mean, that's not bonus health. Keep that in mind. That is your maximum health. So that includes your base stats. So if you have, you know, in the mid game, if you have 2,000 max health, which is really easy to get to, that's going to be a shield for 240, which is pretty big. And it lasts for 4 seconds, which is quite a long time. Now, this is the thing that's interesting. You march unstoppably in the target direction for the next 2.5 seconds. So unstoppably means you can't be crowd controlled. So if you're, so in theory, like if you're Morgana binded or something, anything that just binds you and doesn't stun you, you could just activate this and it would break you out of it. Or if you're slow, you could activate it and it would break you out of it. It doesn't say that your move speed is slowed either. You would think something like this might slow down your move speed. It does not. You get to move full speed. Now, I think you can still redirect. I don't think you have to move in the same direction. It says unstoppably in the target direction over the next 2.5 seconds. Over the march, he belches, dealing fire damage. Enemies hit. I'm not sure. That's going to be pretty awkward if you have to go in a set direction for 2.5 seconds and you can't move. So if you're just like locked out of movement, it doesn't say you can cancel it either. I assume you can probably change directions. That would just be really stupid if you like basically stunned yourself for 2.5 seconds and made it to where you couldn't move. That would feel very clumsy. So I assume you can still move. It just seems like a rumble flame spitter kind of ability, but it breaks you out of CC. I mean, and there's a lot of cool things you could do with this. So, for example, you could block CC from people, kind of like a Braum shield, if you do this. So if, like, Ashe is arrowing in and you just happen to be in front of your AD carry, or you could even flash in front of them if you needed to. Just flash, cast Bellows Breath, and it would block it. Because it's going to block stuns. It won't break you out of stuns. It's not like an Alistar ult, from what I understand. It doesn't break you out of stuns. So if you get feared or stunned and then try to do it, it's not going to work. But if you cast it before they apply the stun, then I think it'll be like an Olaf ult. And it basically won't apply to you. So you could block things like an Ashe arrow. Trying to think of something else that would be really cool to block. Like if Callista's trying to throw somebody in. It's not going to block something like a Rakan running in. But anything that's like a skill shot CC, you could block it. A charm. Yeah, Morgue Bind. Thresh Hook. I think the hook would still latch onto you, but you wouldn't be slowed. Blitz Hook. So I think there are a lot of really cool interactions with this Unstoppable, and I like that. It could be borderline overpowered. I don't think so, though. The damage is not, like, super high. It can be high against max, like, tanks, potentially. But it's on an 8-second cooldown, too, which is huge. I mean, if you get, like, 40% cooldown reduction, it's going to be, like, 5 seconds. And you get a 12% shield for 4 seconds, so that's pretty big. The target range is really close, though. So, you know, it's designed to be almost in melee, not quite. So it doesn't have nearly the range of, like, a Rumble ult. I think it's cool, and I think it's balanced. It does apply Brittle to everybody on the last hit. So if you can get in close to people and just apply this, I think it'd be pretty good damage. I mean, 25% of their current health is a lot. If they have 2,000 health, that's like 500 damage. But I mean, as the health goes down, it's going to do less and less damage. But it does have a minimum of 280 damage. So even if they're really low, it's still going to do 280 damage. So I think it's really strong. It's very spammable. This could be pretty decent wave clear as well. Probably not as good as your Q, but it just has so much more utility because of the Unstoppable, the health shield, and the fact that it applies Brittle. So this is just awesome. This is definitely what you want to level as support, I think. Because you want this up a lot. You want the shield. You want to be able to apply the Brittle stacks. You want to be able to be unstoppable, and it just does pretty good sustain damage. So I think that's really, really strong. And then this is really good too. I mean, Searing Charge. So this is interesting. So you charge forward, you deal physical damage to enemies that you pass through. Okay? So that's just straight up, regardless of whether or not you hit terrain, you run forward. You run through champions also. You run through minions. You run through everything. And you deal damage to it. And it's pretty decent damage. It's like 100 as its base. It's only 60. And the target range is 800. That is huge. Now keep in mind, you can run away too. You can run away. So this actually does give you an escape. Now, it's a pretty long cooldown escape, but it does give you an almost unconditional escape. Now, one thing is you can't jump over walls with it, so it's not quite as good as like a Rakan W. But it has nice range, so if you're getting ganked in lane, you can just like run out of there if you need to. Whereas someone like Braum has to have somebody to jump to. Poppy has to have like an enemy she can jump to latch onto. He can just unconditionally just straight up run away if he needs to, which could make him. I mean, he might be a good top laner. There's a chance he'll be a top 5 top laner. I could see it. I mean, I could see it. It just depends on what's got like. I said I didn't think he could be that great top lane because he doesn't have scaling. We'll talk about that here in a second. I'll talk about why I think he's going to be good as a support, and like he'll probably not be as good as a jungler, and he'll be like okay as a top laner probably. But you can hit them twice. So when you charge through them, and then if you hit terrain, you can hit them twice for massive damage. So look at the math here. 800 engage range is massive. If you look at Rakan's engage range, it's 600. Ali's engage range is 650. So 800 is a really, really long ways away. Like, I'd be surprised if they didn't nerf that down. That's a very long ways away. 350 radius is also pretty big. Like, Alistar's radius is 365, but Rakan's is only 250. And Rakan has a pretty decent little engage range. So it's definitely possible to hit a lot of people. This is pretty high damage, too. I mean, if you have 100 magic resist and 100 armor, keep in mind, this is total. This is total. This is not bonus armor or bonus magic resist. This is straight up all of your armor and all of your magic resist. So getting to a 100 is extremely easy. It's like first item plus your runes and your base scaling. You're going to be there. Because this guy's going to end up at level 18 with like 90 base armor or something. Almost certainly. Like 80 to 90. So he's going to have really high base stats. So if you just have 100 armor and magic resist, which is like easy mode, you're going to have that really early in the game. It does 460 damage to everybody that you hit. Like, that's crazy damage. That's a lot of damage. If you have 200, which if you just buy something like Gargoyle Stoneplate, which will probably be pretty decent on him. If you just buy Gargoyle Stoneplate as like a third item or something, you easily get to 200. You would deal 620 damage. Like, that's so much damage. That is so, like, you don't have to build any magic to do that damage. You don't have to build anything. You can just build like full tank and do massive amounts of damage with that. So that seems overtuned to me. That is big. And the fact that it has such a huge area of effect, knocks people up for 1 second, and does that much damage, and can apply to multiple people. And if you have brittle, it's going to be 1.3 seconds instead of 1 second. Now, yes, you do have to hit terrain to do it, but your little magma pillars can proc that. So can Anivia can proc that with her wall as well. So we'll talk about combos here in a second with him, but I think this is really strong. This is probably the second thing you level. I still think Bellows Breath would be your first one, because that's what procs your brittle. It's very spammable, it's wave clear, it's shield, it's all the good things we talked about before. But I think this will probably be your number 2. The thing is, like, it's going to do huge damage even if you don't have a lot of points in this. Like, you get the cooldown reduction, which is nice. But most of its damage is from the scaling and not from its base. The base of 200 is pretty good. So, like, even if you only have a few points in this, right? Like, 3 points in it. It still is going to do massive damage. Just because of the scaling. So I think this is a really good second thing to level up. So, yeah. Big time damage. So, you know, a good combo here would be you would Volcanic Rupture, slow them down. As soon as that thing pops up in 1.5 seconds, they're going to be slowed, so they're probably not going to get out of it that easily unless they have a flash or a dash. So you do just tag them with, you know, just a very minor amount of damage. But once that pillar shows up, you just charge right into that pillar, knock them up, do huge damage, and then while they're knocked up, just go ahead and Bellows Breath them. They're probably going to get that full charge over 2.5 seconds unless they dash, and then just auto attack them after that. And you're going to get that brittle proc. So you personally don't have to have, it's important to note, you don't have to have extra crowd control to proc brittle. If brittle's on them, you can just straight up auto attack them and it knocks them back for a small amount, but that's going to proc brittle. So that's a huge amount of damage. That combo, just volcanic, charge, full bellow, brittle proc. Big damage. So I think that's going to be huge. And that's not even including Call of the Forge. Let's go ahead and bring in Call of the Forge here. This thing looks crazy. I mean, it is massive. If you watch the videos of this on YouTube, it is a huge, huge ram. It is very hard to dodge. I mean, this thing looks like it takes up like almost an entire lane. Like, it is massively huge. So basically it calls down this huge ram, runs in, it runs towards you. So, and I think it runs from the top of the screen. It might run from the way you're facing. In the target direction. Okay. So it runs in from the way that you're facing. It runs right towards you. Does magic damage on hit. So like level 11, 175. You might be thinking, okay, well that's not that much, right? It can hit them twice. So it just runs on top of them. And I'm not sure. It feels like there might be an interaction here where you can charge and get them. Oh, never mind. Okay, I'm dumb when I was doing this on the math there. So it's not as insane as I thought it. Well, no, it's not as insane as I thought it was going to be. Let me see. I thought the headbutt, when he charged, did damage, and then it could tag them twice and do even more damage. Okay, so the headbutt doesn't do any extra damage unless you hit the bull with it. Okay, okay, that sounds a little bit more reasonable. So 350 plus 24% max health. A 2,000 target is going to be 480 plus 350. That's still really good, though. 830 damage. So still pretty big, but not like ridiculously overpowered. Okay. That makes a little more sense. All right, but it's still really good. So basically, you get an area of effect. So as it comes in, it can hit people and it's going to slow them. It's going to apply the 175 damage. Then you charge the ram, you headbutt it, which is just so awesome. That's just so manly. You headbutt it, and then it goes in the direction that you headbutted it. So it can go back out, or you can get it to go in a different direction. And you can do up to 350 if it hits him once and then hits him again. Now remember that it's going to apply brittle both times it comes through. So the second knockup is probably going to trigger, I don't know, like I said earlier, I think it might trigger the first brittle and then apply another brittle. I'm not sure. But either way, even if there's no brittles involved, it's still 350 damage in a 1 second knockup that could potentially hit an entire team. And there's going to be some amount of brittles involved. So that's really strong. Wow, that is a marked drop there. What? Starts at 150 and goes to 115? That's pretty crazy. It's 35 seconds per level. Jeez. Okay. But yeah, so really powerful, great AoE crowd control. Obviously pairs up very well with your whole kit. You know, so like a full combo, you could do like Volcanic Rupture, Searing Charge into somebody, start doing your Bellows Breath, call in the ram, attack them so they get knocked back, brittled. Or I guess you could call in the ram, call in the pillar, call in the ram, start your Bellows Breath. As soon as the ram touches them, charge them with your Searing Charge, headbutt them. It's going to knock them up. Apply brittles again, auto attack them. Your Bellows Breath finishes, auto attack them again. You would get a triple brittle proc, and all of these would be like full damage, and it's just erased. So I think there's going to be a lot of room for skill expression with him. I think that there's going to be a big difference between an okay Ornn and like a not so great Ornn. So I think he'll still be pretty good even if you're not great with him, but I think if you're really great with him, then it's going to show with some of these plays you can make off of the Call of the Forge and off of your Searing Charge and all that stuff. So lots of damage. Now, one thing to notice, and we'll transition now to talk about where he's going to fit into the metagame, and hopefully we'll finish up here in just a few minutes, and this won't be too long. He doesn't have a lot of scaling, right? So he does have 100% AD, like not a consistent level of scaling that's really telling you to itemize a certain way, right? So he has 100% AD, which is pretty good, but nothing else has AD on it. So you're not really probably going to want to build him with like Titanic Hydra. I mean, I guess you could go like a Titanic Hydra, like Cleaver build on him if you want to. The thing about this is this does magic damage. And this is the thing that ticks. This is how you would stack up Cleaver stuff in theory, but it does magic damage. If it did physical damage, I think that Cleaver actually would be pretty good on him. But I'm pretty sure they deliberately made it magic damage so that you are discouraged from building something like Black Cleaver on him. So this really puts him in a quandary for top lane. Like he has pretty good wave clear, but it can be mana intensive if you use a lot of it, right? So if you're using a lot of Qs and Ws, and like he doesn't have any AP ratios like at all in his whole kit, so you really can't get anything that can help you with that wave clear. Like you can't get anything like a like Doran's Rings or Catalyst or anything like that. And if he wants to wave clear that quickly top lane, he's not going to be able to keep up with, you know, something like a Cho'Gath that has innate, like, mana regen, and someone who can buy a Doran's Ring, like Cho'Gath, Galio, Gragas, even Shin, who doesn't have resources top, Kled, who doesn't have resources. All these champions are going to have much better wave clear. You know, something like Renekton doesn't use resources. Rumble doesn't use resources. Fiora, very low mana cost, and she can build a lot of AD to get the Tiamat to help her wave clear. So I think he's just going to get out-pushed top lane, because he relies pretty heavily on mana, and his push is not that great. It's like, it's okay. And he can't itemize into any mana stuff, like mana regen stuff, because that all is going to have AP on it, and he doesn't have any AP scaling in his kit. So I think that's a big deal top lane, and I think he's going to get bullied and pushed out by things like the stuff I just mentioned: Shin, Maokai, Cho'Gath, Kled, Renekton. Just everybody is going to have better wave clear than him. And more sustain, too. He doesn't have any sustain in his kit, if you notice that. Like, nothing heals him. He does have a shield off of his Bellows Breath. He's just not going to be able to hang top lane. His itemization is just really bad. Like, what is he supposed to buy as a top laner? Like I said, Cleaver's awkward on him because your W doesn't really proc it that well. You know, if you want to go something like Titanic Hydra, which would, or some kind of Tiamat item, either Titanic Hydra or Ravenous Hydra, he doesn't have a lot of great ways to proc that. Like, he doesn't have auto attack resets. He doesn't have a ton of mobility. He doesn't scale very well with AD. He only has one ability that has a pretty respectably long cooldown on it. Yeah, and his core thing has no scaling on it. Like, it doesn't even scale with your max health. So you can't even go, like, Cleaver into Titanic Hydra, just work off your max health scaling. Right? Because it doesn't work. Like, nothing in his kit scales off of his own maximum health. It scales off of other people's maximum health. So, can't really go Hydra, either one of them. You can't really go Cleaver that easily. You can't go, you know, any of the AP items. Spirit Visage is not going to do anything with you. I mean, like, you could go, like, Sunfire. He doesn't have any, like, I guess he does have armor scaling on this. But Sunfire, I guess Sunfire will help you wave clear a little bit, but you don't get any extra benefit from the health on it. I just feel like he just doesn't have enough synergy top. He just doesn't have enough scaling. His itemization is just really, like, awkward and weird for a top laner. So I don't see it. Same thing in the jungle. Like, I mean, you can go Cinder Hulk, but then he doesn't use Spirit Visage very well. I guess you could go, like, Abyssal Mask, but he only has, I guess, 2 of his abilities do magic damage. But it just feels bad, like, and it's gonna, once again, it revolves around mana. Like, he requires quite a bit of mana to use if you're spamming his abilities to wave clear, and he just does not do well with mana items. I mean, in the jungle, you can get the mana item, or whatever, I forgot what it's called, but your core jungle item, Tracker's Knife, does give you some mana regen, but I will be willing to bet that his base mana regen is not going to be that high. It's probably going to be like 6. And he doesn't have very good ganks. Like, it's very conditional. Like, you would have to walk up. He doesn't have any move speed steroids. So, and he can't jump over walls, so he doesn't have any creative gank paths. You would just have to, like, walk up and try to Volcanic Rupture, or just hope that you can, like, charge someone into a wall. Now, he doesn't push people into the wall, which is important too. So, like, Poppy pushes them into the wall. This just goes straight through them and hits the wall. So you could potentially, like, charge through somebody, hit the wall, and it not knock them up. So, yeah, I don't think he's going to be great top. He could be, like, okay. Like I said, the problem is that he seems like he's going to be mana hungry to push waves, and he's just going to be outclassed with other champions. Either don't use resources or the AP champions that can get mana regen in one way or another and outpush him. So not top lane. Jungle, his ganks are just too bad. He's very predictable. His clear is probably okay, but once again, he's going to be very mana hungry. I'm not sure if the jungle item would be enough to help him out with that. Like, he could get, like, you know, redemption or something, but that's just not going to be that great with him because he doesn't have any plus healing and shielding. I mean, I guess his W does. I'm just trying to think of like different permutations. I just don't see it happening top and jungle. Like people will try it. It'll probably be okay, but not great. Not great. I think there'll be better options. Okay, so what's the thing then? I think that he'll be best to support, and I think he'll actually be a really good support. He might actually be the best tank support outside of maybe Thresh. So I think he's going to be strong. I think he has great design. I think he has a relatively high skill cap to do all this stuff correctly. I just think that his itemization is weird unless you're a support. Even as support, it's like his itemization's okay, you know? It's not overpowered. So he has high utility, he has very high base stats. Okay, so the stuff that was hurting him, I was just talking about, he has no scaling. That's actually really good as support because you're not going to be building AD, you're not going to be building damage items, you're not going to be building a lot of these big ticket defensive items, right? You're not going to be getting Spirit Visage. You shouldn't be getting Spirit Visage. You shouldn't be getting, you know, Thorn Mail and stuff like that. You're going to be getting utility items. So what you want when you're trying to think about, is this a good tank for support? It needs to be someone who has really high base stats, has a lot of utility, and can get items that are affected that don't cost a lot of gold. And that's exactly what he is. Like he has, like this is really high base damage, like 25% of your current health base. Yeah, it has no scaling, but it's really high. So that means you don't have to get scaling for it to make it effective. I guess he does have, I said he didn't have any health scaling. He does have health scaling on his W passive, but he's just kind of wonky. His stats are everywhere, kind of like Tarek is. But his base numbers are really high, particularly on this and on this. So you can just get some, you know, like this would be great. Like a Knight's Vow would be awesome on him, right? Because that's going to scale really well with his maximum health. When the damage gets redirected over to you, part of that's going to get blocked by the shield. The armor is going to kick into his Searing Charge to add a little bit more damage. The health is going to help him have more of a shield. He's going to be blocking whoever he targets with his passive. Now, he's not going to be great with Zeke's because he has such a long cooldown on his ultimate. I don't think he'll be great with Zeke's. But I think there are enough good support items with him. So I think you can go Eye of the Equinox, of course, and then Knight's Vow, Locket, be pretty good on it because he wants to team fight. He has an excellent team fight, lots of CC. And the Locket Shield's going to be pretty good with him. Because you want your team kind of grouped up, everyone to kind of just be in there team fighting with the Locket Shield. And then, of course, the Magic Resist and the Armor are going to contribute to his Searing Charge. And then I think one of the really good items, too, is Gargoyle Stoneplate. Because he doesn't need to do a ton of damage, and he's a long-term fighter, so he wants to stay in a fight for a while. Even if Bellows Breath, even if the damage gets cut by 40% whenever you activate. So you can charge in, you're going to do your max damage on your Searing Charge, so that's a lot of your upfront damage is that. And then you can activate your Gargoyle Stoneplate, do the Bellows Breath. It's okay if this doesn't do its full damage. It's nice. It does do good damage, but... well, I guess you would want to activate... No, it wouldn't matter. Okay, yeah. So this would actually be good. Okay, so... you would get the 80-80, so when you Searing Charge in, you get the 80 Magic Resist, 80 Armor. It's going to scale extremely well with his E, right? So you get that when you go in. Then you activate your Gargoyle Stoneplate and Bellows Breath. So then you get that 12% of your maximum health on the Bellows Breath. So that's going to double the amount of health that you get off of that. So if you have, you know, with this build, if you have like 3,000 health, you get double health. You'd go to 6,000. You get 12% of that. So not only would you have 6,000 extra health, but you would get a shield for like 700 something, like 800 something. 700 to 800 shield. I can do math. Let's see. $720. Okay, that's really basic math. I'm kind of ashamed that I had to look that up. I'm just zoned out. Okay, it's been a long day. So you get a 720 shield in addition to having all this extra max health. You would be sitting there like ticking that bellows, just waiting for that brittle to apply. Yeah, your damage would get cut in half in here, whatever. You're going to be invulnerable while you're applying brittle. And then you can do your Call of the Forge once your Stoneplate wears off. Call of the Forge, hit everybody, do that ton of damage. And then also when you activate your gargoyle, of course that feeds into Locket as well. So I think that'll be really good. And we all know that combo. That's been around for a while, the Locket plus Gargoyle. So that's already something that's in vogue. So I think that'll be a really strong initiation. So he can initiate, pop Gargoyle, pop Locket, pop Bellows. As soon as they come down, they're going to be brittle. Just hit everybody with the brittle, do your Call of the Forge, and your whole team's going to be shielded for a ton. You're going to be unkillable for 4 seconds, and you're just going to stun lock everybody and just do a ton of damage. So I think he's really, really well positioned as a support. I think that he leverages the Locket plus Gargoyle combo better than almost anybody because of the scaling on his E and because of the scaling on his W, and the fact that his W takes 2.5 seconds to warm up anyways before you get the brittles. So you just want to sit in there, just sit in the thick of things and be invulnerable while you set up for that 2.5 second delay before boom, you hit him with the brittle, bring in the ram, and just combo him out. So I think he's going to be really good. So not top lane, not jungle. I think support going to be excellent, and I think his best champions he's going to be good with. There's going to be a couple of different classes of champion that he's good with. So first of all, anyone that's like a tank that just locks people up and can consistently apply CC. So Sejuani, Galio, Nautilus. These are the 3 biggest ones I could think of. And then that way, every time that you apply brittle, which you can apply it a lot, remember, you can get 3 times in like under 5 seconds. Then that's going to give 30% extra CC to the Sejuani, who's going to be stunning people for 2 seconds. That's going to be translate that into a 2.6 second stun. Galio is going to be taunting people for 1.5 seconds, which is going to be like an extra, half a second there. It's going to be like a 1.9 second stun. Nautilus is just stunning people all over the place with his auto attacks, his ultimate, his hooks. So I think that those 3 in particular would be really strong. Now there are other, Malachi's another one who's a really big one. His root duration is already 2 seconds. That's going to make it 2.6. His knockback, I think is it like a second? I can't remember. And his ultimate stuns people for quite a long time. So I think that he's going to be crazy with those. Now the other like terrain things that should immediately jump to people's mind that could be a combo would be something like a J4, Trundle, Anivia. These are all really cute interactions. So with J4, obviously he dunks someone, does a ton of damage, and then you just E in. You don't even have to set up with your Q. Because that's one thing, is it could be kind of clumsy if you're like in an open field, like in the middle of mid lane, and you're trying to Q somebody. It's going to be very obvious that you're setting up to ult them. However, if J4 just like runs in, like dunks somebody, you don't even have to mess with the Q. You can just immediately searing charge. It's going to run into J4's thing, blow it up, and knock everybody up who's close to it. So if J4, that's going to be a really sweet combo. Like if J4 just runs in, dunks 3 people, and then you charge them and knock them up, that's going to be really nice. Conversely, you can protect people from a J4. So if the enemy has a J4 and they dive in and they don't blow up your target immediately, then you can searing charge in, knock up the J4, blow up the terrain, and free your ADC to be able to run out of there. So I think that's going to be a really cool interaction. Trundle's another one. Trundle's not super popular right now, but if you had a Trundle top laner, for example, or maybe a Trundle jungle, I don't know if that's going to happen. Trundle's been a big mystery to me, because you would think that he'd be good in this meta because he's very good against tanks, but in reality, he just hasn't really shown up a lot. I'm not exactly sure why. I thought he was going to be a lot better. I'd have to sit down and analyze it. Maybe I'll do it for the patch notes here in a little bit. But anyways, the Trundle Pillar would be cute. You could put the Trundle Pillar behind people in a team fight and then just boom, just go in, knock them up, start the fight. Just go in, searing charge, start your Bellows, Call of the Forge God, proc all your stuff, your gargoyles, your Locket. I think that could be an interesting interaction. Now, so Jarvan is definitely a thing that could happen, because Jarvan is very strong right now. He has great team fight presence, and just setting up that Wombo combo with Jarvan would be really sweet. So that's the most likely to happen. Trundle, less likely to happen, but it's cool. Anivia is another one that could have some really good synergies. So, first of all, Anivia's wall is the obvious thing, right? So Anivia just puts a wall like right behind somebody, and then just boom, you just smash it, knock them up. But the synergies go even further than that. So with Anivia, you want people to sit in your ice storm, right? And so if you wall and start your ice storm, and then he knocks them up, they're going to be sitting in your ice storm while they're knocked up. So that's going to guarantee her that she can use her her E to do full damage to them, massive damage, and they're going to sit in the storm and take additional damage. It also guarantees when you do that knock up, when she does the wall, you run in, knock up. You could potentially call in the boar, or call in, I want to call it a boar, call in the ram, knock the ram. I guess you could call it in first, run in, knock it up. After they get knocked up, you could headbutt the ram, knock them up again, then they're brittle. And then Anivia stuns them with her Q. Like, she could potentially get off two of her little ice lances. Let me see. Let me pull up Anivia here real quick. What's the cooldown on the frostbite? 4 seconds. Yeah, I mean, I think that she could potentially get off 2 frostbites. So how this would work, and that's like insane damage. 100%, it's up to 300 damage. This is what you max first on Anivia. It's 300 damage plus 100% AP. So she walls, starts her storm, you run in, knock them up with your E, she gets a free frostbite. Okay, and then right when they're about to land, she throws her Q, stuns them again. You know, it's going to be a 1 point something duration there. And then if you get your boar to come, or if you get your ram to come in at the same time, so wall, call on your ram, knock him up. She does her frostbite to hit him for that massive damage, and then she hits him with the Q, stuns him again. And then your ram comes in, applies brittle, and then you can either auto attack to stun them or headbutt your ram and knock them out again. Then they're going to be stunned with the brittle proc for an additional like 1 second. And then by the time all that goes on, she's going to be able to frostbite them again. And the whole time they're going to be sitting in this. Oh, I cannot believe that damage. Oh my god. They're going to be sitting in this for like 4 seconds, which is going to do another like 900 damage, not including AP scaling. This is going to do double damage, which is an 80%. It's going to be disgusting, like, damage. Like, obviously that requires a lot of coordination, and you're not going to see that in solo queue most of the time. But I don't think it takes that much coordination to crystallize, knock them up with the E, start your bellows, and then just frostbite, Q, stun them, brittle them, or whatever. I think that's going to be a lot of damage, and that's going to be just like instantly start a fight, because this has 1,000 range on it, and you have 800 range on your headbutt. So it's just crystallize, initiate, and it's going to be a free flash frost plus full frostbite plus glacial storm. That's gross. And another thing is she's a pretty good death cap user, right? So she can't rush at first item. She has to get either tier or Rod of the Ages. Typically she could get both, although, you know, you could just go one of those. Like, you could just go, like, Rod of the Ages, skip the tier, and then go Death Cap, potentially. But Death Cap is really good on her. Like, once you get your mana problem solved, Death Cap's really good, because she has an 80% on her Q, she has 100% on her E, scaling, and even a 37.5% on her ult. It's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. So she could be a good Death Cap user to upgrade, like Death Cap second or third item. I'm not sure if she'll do that. Like, she might still just want to do her tier plus Rod of the Ages. You know, people go Leandries right now. I think you could just go Death Cap plus upgrade instead of Leandries. She does have really high base damages, so Void Staff and Leandries are really good on her. If we look at what people are building... Why are people building ZZ Rock Portal? I don't know. I don't get that. That's bizarre. I mean, it does help you push and take out mid lane faster. But either way, I think that you could just go like Tear, Rod, Death Cap. Like Death Cap, you don't get it a lot right now, but I don't know. I could see a world, even if you don't go for the Death Cap upgrade, which I think could be good on her, just having that wall plus guaranteeing a landed Q and a landed Flash Frost should be a dead person. So I think that's really powerful. I talked about Fizz and Echo already. I think that the Lichbane in a Death Cap build with him is really good. And then obviously just being able to chain stun people. Now, Echo with his stun, if you can manage to, like if we look at Echo here, that's going to be another disgusting combo. I think that Echo is already going to be really strong on this patch. I thought he was strong on last patch. He just doesn't see a lot of play. But they're nerfing all the other mages on this patch. So, or a lot of the other top-end pokey mages. So in theory, like, he has really good ratios too, just like Fizz. He has a 0.8 on a passive that's on a 5-second cooldown. That is massive, massive scaling with AP, because that's like a 5th ability that scales with AP. All of his stuff scales with AP. So all 5 of his abilities, including his passive, scale with AP. Like, a lot of scaling. This has a 0.9 on his Q. Parallel convergence. It stuns people for 1.75 as well, which is huge. I mean, if you get that extra, like, 30% stun duration, that's probably going to be a 2.5 second stun if it's brittle. And this is going to almost guarantee that you land that, too. So if you go in with your E and you start the fight off of a pillar, that's almost going to guarantee that his parallel convergence is going to hit. And the shield strength is huge. I mean, it's 150%. So even if you miss the parallel convergence, just walking into your shield is going to give you a massive amount. Plus 3% of your AP, target's missing health. That's not, so if you have like 300 AP, that's 12%. It's really good. So yeah, and then the phase dive is just something that's spammable that does not only your damage, but that applies on hit. Yeah, so that applies your Lichbane proc to people. Then of course your Chrono Break. It's just like 150% ratio again, a huge ratio on your heal. So all of this just synergizes so well with Echo. Like, he doesn't have the terrain, but he really wants that death cap, and if you can just hold people still long enough, then he can just crush people. So I think that he's going to be really good. Obviously, Fizz doesn't have a lot of CC either, but just the fact that you can upgrade that death cap and the fact that he's tanky and just sort of CCs people a lot is really powerful. So I think overall he's going to be a tier 2 champion to start with. I don't think he's going to be like mega overpowered right off the bat. He could be, but I think people are going to have to learn him. They're going to have to practice him. It's going to require some coordination on your team. You're going to have to tell people like which items they should buy and when. People are going to have to learn the power spikes. They're going to have to redo their, you know, build order they got off of Mobify or whatever. I think overall, if I'm looking, I haven't redone my tier list for 7.16 yet. I don't think it's going to shuffle around that much. I think he'll be better than Tarek. I think he'll be better than Sej, Braum. Probably Blitz, maybe Thresh. I don't know. Like, it's hard to be better than, like, Thresh because he just has so much utility as far as tanks go. But I think he'll probably be better than Thresh. I really do, because I think he's going to be more reliable. Like, I think that it's going to be easier to start a fight with him. And I think that his base damages are just so much higher, and he just has a lot more team utility. I don't know. Like, the hook and the lantern are a lot of team utility, but I mean, a lot of it's going to hinge on how good Searing Charge is. Like, how fast can you throw up this pillar and then charge into it? Are they going to be able to get out of it for 1.5 seconds? So I think there are definitely going to be some compositions where he's way stronger than others. But I think that in general, even if you don't have a lot of synergy in your comp, he can still be pretty good. I think he has enough different things in his kit that are good that he can still be pretty good. So I think he's going to be the best tank for solo queue. Now, as far as like engaged champions, I'm not sure if he's going to be better than Rakan. I really like Rakan a lot. He doesn't have any plus healing or shielding like in his kit at all. He doesn't like heal or shield, which is a big hit in an Ardent Sensor meta. If they nerf Ardent Sensor in the next patch, which it's possible they could, if they do nerf it, he would be the primary beneficiary, because I think he's going to be the best tank, and he doesn't use it. So, we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, I think he's going to be very strong. I think he's a great champion. Once again, all of these numbers are subject to change, because this is just PBE looking at him. I don't think that he's overpowered. I really don't. Not to start with. I think that he does a lot of really cool things, but it appears as though they balanced him fairly well. I mean, some of his combos, like in the best case scenarios, are pretty nasty, but it's going to require a lot of skill expression early on, and I just don't think people are going to be able to pull off like the triple brittle that I was talking about earlier. So I think he'll be all right. I think he'll be all right. If they were going to nerf something about him, like they might nerf some of his, I don't know, maybe his base damage on some of these could be a little high, although that's not that bad. I don't think they'll nerf him. I think he seems pretty balanced. I think he seems pretty balanced as is. So we'll see. I don't think he's over the top. I think he's all right. I think he's like viable. I think he'll be a good support, but I don't think he's too over the top. So my verdict, strong. Looking forward to playing him as support. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I don't think he's going to be at the very top of the support food chain, like I said before, unless they nerf Ardent Sensor. I just think that Janna, Rakan, and Sona in particular are just really, really strong right now. And I don't think that's going to change until they nerf probably Ardent Sensor and maybe Coin. I think Ardent Sensor would be a good start. But I'll talk about that in my patch notes video. Just stay tuned for 7.16. I'll tell you what I think should happen in terms of the support to balance it out a little bit more, to bring tanks up a little bit more, and to bring AP supports up a little bit more. But yeah, I think he's going to be really good. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this video. I had intended to make it 30 minutes, and lo and behold, it's an hour and 30 minutes. So typical strategy professor fashion, but there's just a lot of stuff to talk about, and I haven't really seen an in-depth analysis of the numbers and a talk about like where he might fit into the meta. And all of that good stuff. Like, I've seen gameplay and, like, you know, the all caps, OP, you know, all AD, assassin middle, Ornn, and all of this other stuff. But, you know, I haven't, so I've seen the sensational stuff, but I haven't seen a real serious analysis yet. So I just wanted to offer that for you. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember, it could be subject to change. I'll do a full length once they actually release him. I will talk about him a lot in the patch notes on the release. I know people are chomping at the bits. They want to know where's he going to fit in. They want to get hype about him. So I just wanted to give you a real good in-depth analysis there to kind of match the reality, I think, to kind of the hype that you see in the all caps. And I think he does live up to quite a bit of the hype. I don't think he's OP. I think he's good, but I think that's a good place to be. Okay, thank you very much. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.